All right. We are live. So hello, everybody. Make a comment if you are here with us. Just a reminder that we don't necessarily know if you're here with us because we're on StreamYard, not like Facebook Live. But even though it's being streamed live. And if you're having a watch party, just a reminder that I can't see the comments when you have the watch party. If you comment in the watch party, just if you comment on your actual Facebook feed. Okay, that's my 2 cents. I am here. Hi, Lydia, with this incredible woman, Danielle Martin, and I'm going to have her introduce herself. But I want to let people know that I stalked her in a good way. I've been doing that a lot since actually the quarantine has happened, which is just like a strange thing that I've connected more with people that I don't know that I would otherwise, because I'm not like a computer person. I don't love being on the computer, but once I see people that are doing really dynamic, truthful things, which is, we've already had a little pre-conversation about that. I love to share them. I love to have conversations with them and bring light to people that are doing amazing, wonderful things in the world, particularly hard things. And I think hard things are to talk about. I know that there's a lot going on with race, and I talked to you guys on Friday about this, on Fearless Friday, but I'm so glad that Danielle's here today to continue that conversation. So Danielle, why don't you just introduce yourself, say whatever you want. I love the introduction of yourself as a spiritual doula. If you could touch on that, I would love it, but you don't have to. Floor is yours.
Yeah. So my name is Danielle Martin, and I live in North Carolina, but I'm originally from New York City, and I'm a certified yoga instructor. But my forte is really getting people grounded and centered and becoming more curious about who they actually are, so they can have better relationships and understand basically why they do the things that they do, whether they're good or bad, and encourage people to do more things that make them feel good, because that's when you're at your real place of who you are, when you feel most comfortable and you're experiencing your joy. I'm a certified yoga instructor. I don't know if I said that, because I said that to Ayana, so I can't remember if I just said that.
I know we had a pre-conversation. I should have just recorded it all. It was so good.
So I'm a certified yoga instructor. I'm very heavily into metaphysics.
Say more about that, just because they don't know that people know what that is.
Okay. So metaphysics is basically a field of other bodies. So like the chakra system that, probably people are familiar with.
Yeah.
You can't see it, but it's an existing physical body that you have. You have a physical body, an emotional body. You have a mental body, which is your brain, and then you have your spiritual body, which would be more into the realm of metaphysics. So It's not, you would never learn this in like regular school. It's not part of physical, mental things like gym or learning something. And it's not like an emotional thing, which you would learn in therapy. It's something that you actually have to seek out in order to find your space and find your way. And sometimes people say that they're religious, but they're not spiritual. They're not necessarily spiritual. Then there are people that say they're religious and they're spiritual. So it just, it's another way of exploring who you are, except, besides your name, where you were born and where you came from.
Yeah, I love that. Sorry, I had like a gazillion thoughts when you were talking all about that. So you did an amazing TED Talk, and that's how I really glommed onto you. So I was stalking you before that, and then I saw that, and I was like, oh, that's why we're connected. because that I just love the whole theme of that. And so you talk a lot about Black folks, you talk a lot about reparations, you talk a lot about yogis and health and all that. Um, so for people that haven't seen that, and I posted it a bunch, and I'll post it again. What happens is people glom onto it after. But say a little bit about like where did that come from, and for people that don't know, if you want to go into like reparations and what all that
Yeah.
is, and just the juice of what you were sharing there.
So basically, enslaved people built the United States of America and created the economy that we have now. Helped build that economy, and or basically built that economy. And reparations is a movement to have some repair, like some either economic buy-in or some type of support to acknowledge that that is actually what we gave to this country as it was
Yes.
being built. Free labor, basically. Free labor for a long time. And I'm not going to use I'll say this, it's much more dire than what I'm saying, but I don't want to trigger people right now. I just want to get them into what the idea is. So there's been a conversation about what reparations would look like for the African Americans in this country, and we always talk about money. And because I'm in the health and wellness industry, I put together a TED Talk, which was reparations as health and wellness, meaning like the payback would be providing health and wellness for the Black people in this country. And
I
now,
love it.
yeah,
I just love it. I
exactly.
love it. I love it. I love it.
And I think that now, because so much is surfacing during our COVID crisis,
Right.
that I would probably even do a different TED Talk than what I did in September.
Sure.
Because now, like, we're acknowledging that racism really does weather on Black bodies. Just what just happened with Ahmaud Arbery. That story hit close to home because I used to run in the morning with my dad.
Yeah.
And we lived in a pretty decent neighborhood. And that was also back like in 1985, 1984, but things are really different now. And that was really a senseless death. And
yes.
we really need to start looking at what is happening to the Black body and in the Black experience that most Americans that are not of color have no idea is actually happening. Like, they're two worlds. So, oops, sorry. There we go. So that's why I wanted to do the TED Talk on that, because yes, I'm open to receiving other economic compensation for reparations, but it would also be good if we could have health and wellness, because we're seeing how health and wellness instilled also because we're seeing how, there are mental health issues that come up, because of racism, due to racism and white supremacy, and that's a lot.
It's
So
a
if
lot.
and that's just not even children, the job, regular maintenance of the house and managing, like all that stuff. So there's all this other stuff that we have to bring to the table. And then when do we really get a time to catch up and rest, which is interesting that COVID-19 is happening right now. It's really, for a lot of Black people, it's like it's a time to rest and a time to catch up. I mean, we're not happy about being unemployed or the deaths that are occurring you know, I'm not going to say it's a totally joyous moment, but there is a silver lining and an opportunity for Black people to be able to rest and
Right.
pause, really feel where they are in their bodies, where they feel safe for, you know, a
Mm-hmm.
consistent time. You know, it's just them and their family. And that makes me more emotional than anything, just knowing that families have this time to be able to be together, which is so, it's a tremendous gift, I think.
No, it is. And I love your analogy you just made. It's like it's almost like dealing with a grief on top of being a person in the world, right? So if you I do a Fearless Fridays, and I was talking to people, and I don't actually care if you trigger people anyway. I think that's good. So speak on, my friend. You know, I think these conversations need to
Okay.
happen. Oh,
No
just like you
problem.
said it, I'm in. Yeah, no, I think the conversation needs to happen, and I think that that's what we're losing right now, which is why we're in the situation we're in. Is people are so shying away from hard conversations, which just need to happen, right? And so the worst that's going to happen is someone's going to get triggered, someone's going to get angry, feelings are going to get hurt. That's already happening, and Black people are dying. So fuck that shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, we got to get real, and we
Yeah.
got to get in people's bodies, and white people's bodies specifically, so that they can understand what it's like. So your analogy of, like, imagine you're dealing with all these things, right? So if you're a white person in COVID, and you maybe, because you're white, have some more economic stability, right? And I know that this may trigger people because they're like, well, not all white people have money. I get it. I'm saying because of the economic structure that we're in, more likely it is, that's what we're dealing with, right? So
Well, they
if
have
you're
more
that,
money than most Black people in this country.
exactly, totally. And like that on top of then having to deal with racism in general, then having to deal with something like Ahmad, not only do you have to, it's like, I think what people also don't miss is like, when a Black person is killed, or for, it's specifically because of racism, it hurts us to our cell, like our cellular level. It's not just like, oh, somebody died. It's like, no, you've now removed, and now you are threatening like the whole group of people, like my people. You're now
Right.
threatening all of us. So, and that's the scary part. And then you have to deal with the trauma on top of that. So that's what I do for my job. So I do a lot of training. I'm an LICSW, and I do training for people around meditation, movement, and mindfulness to heal that, which is why I asked you if you wanted to do a workshop together. We'll talk later.
Yes,
But
of course, it's going to be so much fun.
yeah,
I have all these ideas. I'm like, yeah, let's do
yeah,
that.
yeah, let's do it. But that is so detrimental, and I just think it's so important for people to understand how emotionally hard that is, and then to function in the world after that, and then
Right.
fight all the time for your economic wellness, well-being, and your children. Like I had shared, I don't know if you saw, but I had shared my daughter's response as we were going to run, and she was saying how she was basically afraid because she wanted to wear white so people wouldn't know that she was Black, because she was afraid that she was going to get hurt.
Right.
And like, oh my god, like, oh my god, right? So as a mom, never mind the mom, and she, you know, all that stuff emotionally, like, I still cry about it. I'm gonna cry about that forever. I'm gonna cry about Ahmad for it, like all of it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And so, no, I mean, you're right. And, you know, at a time when, you know, we're processing this pandemic, to also be able to process something like this collectively, because we're
Mm-hmm.
all home, you know, really
Right.
gives a really different flavor to this. Not a different flavor, but like it gives it more of a lens. Like people actually are not having to go to work. They can actually process what they're thinking
Right.
and write
They
their
can see it.
exact thoughts on Facebook, or have a conversation or whatever. It's like really leaning into it.
Right.
And I just, you know, this is why we can't go back to normal. You know, that whole
Totally.
conversation about going back to normal. It's like, normal, you mean what we're used to? I'd rather say what we're used to than saying normal, because what we're
Right.
used to is far from normal. I mean, you know, I have this whole thing about the way that we are encouraged to live when we're young girls.
Mm-hmm.
And it's usually about like, oh, don't do that, boys won't like you. Like when you're like 6, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's like,
Yeah.
why am I worried about that now? But that becomes like a mantra, that becomes uh, a background tape for young ladies as to,
Totally.
you know, boys are the priority. The priority in your life is to be able to have a husband, you know, 2.2 kids,
Like the whole
you
yard. Yep.
know, and I think that comes from a very specific white supremacy culture. It's about
Mm-hmm.
collecting things, and it's about status, and it's about being nice and perfect and this and that. And so again, you know, the pressures of that for the Black and brown community, when it's already been stated that this white experience is the norm and is what you should be shooting for. And it just doesn't, it's, you just can't speak that language to an entire nation of people.
Right.
And so what happens is that we, I think, as women, become more preoccupied with what's going on with how we're going to get that man, how we're going to please whomever,
Right. Whomever. Right.
whomever,
Totally.
and we start to step away from who we are, and then we get married, and then we have 1 kid, you know, and then we have 2 kids. You know, it's like
Yeah.
all
And
this
then
stuff,
you're in
and
it. You're in it.
you're in it. And so, you know, it's really interesting because my life has really changed since I've been 50, and I can imagine what that looks like for married women in their 50s. You know, this is the time when a lot of women start businesses, because I think they start to really figure out who they are and
Yeah.
what they don't want to deal with anymore. You know,
Right.
that's you know, that's from, okay, my husband has to go, to like, you can't act like that as a child anymore, like you have to step it up. So a lot of and so then when you bring that plate of that bill of goods to integrate into the life of a Black woman raising children that she has to be concerned about whether they're gonna come home or not, that's a lot. That's a
Right.
lot of stress.
That's a
That's a lot of
lot
stress.
for the body, the whole, yes, all of it. It's a lot. Yeah. I can't say how much it is. It's so
No,
much.
yeah, it's
Like
you can't. You
my
really
heart
can't.
hurts every time I think about it. Like personally myself, and I
Exactly.
just can't even imagine other people. Like I don't. Yeah. So here's a question for you, because a lot of people are asking me, um, like what do people do? Like how do they help this structural racism? Particularly white women are asking me this. Like what is the best thing that they can do to help the situation of racism? Of like a lot of that came out of the whole Ahmaud thing, and you know obviously it's not
So
the first time that's happened.
I don't speak for all Black people.
Totally.
I want to say that.
I gotcha.
And what I do want to say is that racism takes a lot of work. Like, okay, so Resma Menachem is the gentleman that wrote My Grandmother's Hands.
Yeah.
Menachem isn't okay. So it's like, I think Black people have their own work to do, and I think white people have their own work to do, things to do with other white people.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because my rationale is like, y'all think up answers for everything else. You know what I'm saying? Like, why Like, why? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
there are
I
books,
know.
there are plenty of books to read. You know, there are plenty of articles online. There's a plenty of opinions. There's a plenty of, you know, equity consultants you can reach out to, you know, that you can find out what work you need to do and then maybe get aligned with a white equity consult, you know,
Totally.
just do the work without Black people.
Yes.
It's not necessary. It's so,
No.
I mean, I've been in equity circles, and I feel some kind of way when they want to have certain they don't make certain distinctions about why. I think we need to look more at what is happening in the white culture.
Sure.
We're so stuck on what's happening to Black people and this and that and the other that there's none of this. What's going on with you? What's going on with you, white person? How is it that you feel comfortable? Like, I know why you feel comfortable, but like, think about it really. It's like, why are you calling the police on a person that's not hurting anyone?
Right. Mm-hmm.
What, like, what's going on in your mind that you feel like, first of all, you're not even a police officer, that's your job?
Well, yeah, that was a whole other thing. Like, what the hell with that whole situation? None of that.
But that's part of doing your own work. It's like, you have to check yourself and be like, that makes no sense. Like, besides the fact that, you know, I'm a white person with privilege, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't correlate.
Right.
The reason why they should be calling the police. And that, to me, seems like really, I'm not going to say racism is a mental health issue, but like, something's wrong with you. You need to go get help.
Actually, I would say that racism is a mental health issue. You don't think?
Okay. You know, I'm not a clinician, right? Like,
I would say that if anything, in the DSM-4 or 5 or whatever, it should have racism on the top. Because I think it's a disease. I think people are acting out of a disease that sometimes they're aware of, sometimes they're not. But if you don't pay attention to it and then act on it, same thing like in recovery. So in recovery, if I'm not actively in that space of choosing not to be in active addiction, then I'm choosing to be in, you know, in another space.
Right.
I do think it's the exact same thing. If you are a white person and you're not aware of all the things that you are participating in that are racist, right? So again, it's easier for people to hear, like, if you're participating in your white privilege, that is racism, right? And then, so there's the mental health stuff. If you're not aware of it, that's your own stuff, and that's what you have to unlearn.
And now we have Robin DiAngelo and her book White Fragility to show you all the ways that happens.
Right. Yes.
And you know,
that's a good point, because I always go back to Peggy McIntosh and her unpacking the backpack.
That too, definitely Peggy McIntosh. I'm not a person that studied equity their entire life. I'm not an equity consultant, you know. I'm just saying there are definitely there are definitely a lot of resources out there, but yes, Peggy McIntosh, but Robin DiAngelo really, like, she nails it.
Yeah.
I'm
glad you mentioned that.
When you do that, that's white fragility.
Right.
Like, you know, she said, like, when you do that, that's white fragility. And like, you know how sometimes you think you're helping, that's white fragility. And you know, so it's a process of, you know, reading that book first.
And then having the conversation about it.
With other white people.
Good point. I know. I said that too on Friday.
Like,
I was like, if you
Black
have
people know what white fragility looks like. We're good. We're good. You know what that looks like.
You live it every day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we got it.
Yeah.
Y'all need to know what it's about. Like, you need to figure this out, you know, and I think about this a lot, and I mean, I would not want to be a white person right now.
Mm. Why do you say that?
Let me count the weight. No, I mean, just for this situation right now, it's like
Yeah.
I am able to look at myself at the end of every day and feel really good about the things that I've done in the last 24 hours, or what I did since I woke up in the morning, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And to see what's happening to the Black people and brown people in this country around this virus,
Mm-hmm.
and around the killing of Ahmaud Arbery and the killings like it that came before him.
Yeah.
How do you look at yourself in the mirror and feel like you did okay in your day?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
You know, and I like to say that's one of the reasons why the wellness industry makes so much money, because, you know, there's a lot of cognitive dissonance mixed up in there. It's like, we are one, and we're meditating, and we're chanting, and we're ringing bells, and that's great. But you also need to pay attention to the fact that
Sorry,
you keep
just so
staring at the
funny.
Black.
I know what you mean. So I was just I was laughing with you.
No, it's like, you know, but you keep staring at the Black bodies in the room. You
Right.
keep wanting to know what they're experiencing, and you can't ever know that. And that's
Right.
really voyeuristic. And that's why Black people need to do their work around racism separately from white people,
Yeah.
because it becomes voyeuristic to watch people in pain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My word. But so you talk about the yoga in your TED Talk. Say a little bit about like yourself and how you got there and why you think it's so important for people of color. And
So I think it's important for everybody, first of all.
yeah. Mm-hmm. It is.
And so I got into yoga when I was 29. I had messed around with like reading books and the philosophy of it, like, you know, when I was 28, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And I bought like a book that was like $1.50, and I was like, oh, I can do that, and that feels good, and this and that. But then I moved to Los Angeles when I turned 29. And, you know, everybody in Los Angeles does yoga. So I went to my first yoga class, and I was like all buff. I had like 8-pack abs, like huge muscles. And I was like, you know, going to this class, and I was like, oh my God, I just got my butt kicked. What happened? What happened? So that made me really curious. It's like, I'm so strong. Why did I have so much difficulty in that process of doing yoga? And,
Interesting.
you know, and as you go to yoga, it's like you can't muscle through it. You have to surrender your body to what is happening, which means you have to surrender in places where there might be trauma, you know, and release. I think the first release I ever had in a yoga class, I was just like, I was so shocked. I was crying so much.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't
Yeah.
know that there were going to be tears at the end of me getting through like this part of pigeon pose, you know, like everybody knows.
Yeah.
Now I know that because like pigeon pose is like that pose, but you
Yeah.
know, and so that just made me want to go after whatever else was hiding in my
Mm-hmm.
body, you know. And then from changing physically, you start to think differently, because you have to, in order to release what is attached in your body. And so that process is what made me keep going back to yoga. Like, never lifted weights after that. Like, I've lifted weights maybe about 20 times in the last few years.
Were you a bodybuilder? Is
Because
that what you said?
a long time ago, when I was,
Oh yeah,
when
yeah,
I was much younger, when I was like 20, 21, um,
yeah.
but I really gained so much more from the yogic process than I did
Right,
from weightlifting, that I was like, I was stuck on that. And then that's when I started to learn about vibrational remedies. And that's when I started learning about homeopathy and alternative medicine. And just like my world opened up in terms of just how I could continually heal myself. Like there was so much more to release, to take out, and in
right.
California they have all the ways for you to do that. It's like you can do that on the light table, you can do the foot bath, or you can, it's like, so I lived there for 12 years, so I did a lot of those processes. And
Yeah.
and I used to be very, now I can say that I used to be really, really cut off, you
Mm.
know, um, not knowing that I was cut off, because you don't know you're cut off when you're cut off. And just really start,
Mm-hmm.
especially with flower essences and doing yoga.
Right.
And because the flower essences basically address anything emotional. So you take vitamins for your brain, and you take vitamins for like your heart, to retain muscle tension, things like that. And flower essences are to basically, it's like therapy in a bottle,
Hmm.
because it starts to unravel things, and you start to just show up a little bit differently, a little bit more every day, until you realize you're
Yeah.
like, oh, like I wasn't acting like this like 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, I would have definitely not reacted that way to that person. And so I've been doing those for about 22 years too. so so that's how I got into yoga. And then in 2006, I was training at Forest Yoga in Santa Monica, California. And the teachers kept telling me, they were like, so you're going to do the next teacher training? I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And so they were like, you're going to do the next teacher training, right? And so I did, and I loved it. And since at the end of it, was like it was a 1 month training program. It's insane, like 5 o'clock in
It's
the
a lot.
morning, chanting and yoga. And yeah, and Anna Forrest is no joke.
Yes.
She's a real one. And so after that, we sat around in a circle, and they were like, where do you think you're going to take your yoga off the mat? And that was in 2006. And in
Mm-hmm.
2006, I was completely sure the vision that I got was Black men in the United States of America needed yoga the most. Like
Right.
it claimed, like I didn't even have time to think about it. Just like, this is the thing. And, you know, I left, I left, I went to I worked at a couple of studios, but it wasn't, you know, there were really not a lot of Black people doing yoga, and the Black people who did sing yoga were women.
Mm-hmm.
And I went on to different things in my life and took on different jobs, because I wasn't quite ready to be, I wasn't quite ready to be a teacher yet, in the way that I feel I need to hold that space. Like some
Yep.
people, they finish their teacher training, they're like, okay, I'm going to teach a class. I'm like, I want to embody it a lot more. And
Yes.
then, so I did more. I think I worked for Whole Foods in Los Angeles the last 2.5 years I was there. So I was doing that. And then I was working at a yoga studio afterwards, but it was just like assisting teachers and working the front desk. Then my brother passed in
Hmm.
2010. He was still living in New
Okay.
York. No, I mean, those things happen. And
Yeah.
And so I felt like I need to be close to my parents.
Gotcha.
And so at least driving distance, you know.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
yeah.
moved coast and I wound up living in North Carolina. And I didn't make the equation that I'm moving to the South. Like, I don't know why. Like, I'm a pretty smart
Oh,
person, but I was like, I didn't even think about it. I'm like, oh, here I am moving to, you know, blah, blah, you know. And then
oh
I
my
get
goodness.
here
Oh my goodness.
and I
Mm.
was really ready to do some yoga here. And I was like, oh no, I don't think that's going to be happening here in the city anytime soon because I didn't really want to teach yoga to white women. You know, my experience of being in health and fitness for so long is that um, I've had a lot of awkward scenarios in restrooms and in the gym with white women. Let's just put it that way. I'm not going to go into details.
You don't need to. I know exactly what you mean. Oh my gosh. And then you overhear stuff and wow.
Yeah. And so,
And that's
you
hard.
know,
And then
that's
I'm going to just say another form of trauma right there.
yeah. And God bless all the Black yoga teachers, you know, that their compassion is so much bigger and their love space was so much bigger, but I wasn't there. I was like, it's hard. I mean, like,
Right.
I being treated in North Carolina the way I was treated when I first came here was just like, what's happening? Like, where, like, I'm like, oh, I'm in the South. Oh, yeah, right. And my mom's from the South. She's from St. Petersburg, Florida. So we would have conversations about that. And she'd be like, yep, it's in the South. And I just didn't know. So now, you know, now it's like, I really want to dig into providing yoga for Black audiences, for Black people. And I also understand now much more what it takes to get there, to have people become interested in yoga, like how much other stuff. Like if I did yoga with like the background that I have, like certain people that weren't as fortunate as myself and
Gotcha.
like, you know, so I really need to I really am reframing, which has been what I've spent a lot of quarantine doing. I've spent a lot of time reframing what that looks like. You
Yeah,
know,
I love it. I love it. And I think we can maybe do some of it together.
yes, definitely. You know, would definitely
And
not
do
be
you
nice
know
to have.
Ian? Do you know Ian Elmore Moore?
No, I only know him from Facebook, like you.
Oh, okay. Because you guys should connect. You're close.
I know.
You
I know. I'm
should.
like, oh, I was kind of stalking him too. I'm like, oh, yeah.
Yeah,
But
and
you
he's got
know,
the black men. He's got the black. He does the yogis for the black men.
yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
there's a man I connected to named Changa Bell who's in the Baltimore, Washington, D.C. area, who's just amazing. He has podcasts. And so, you know, and then I got my Comedic Yoga certification in September 2018 and still not steeped enough
Oh,
in that to like really, you know, go
that's
through all
cool.
that. But definitely it has informed my journey a lot, taking
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
class.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
just yeah, I'm a much different person than I was when I moved here.
Yeah. And I think what you talked about too, about holding space, is so important. It took me a long time teaching before I felt like I was holding space in a way that was whole for myself and whole for other people. And that just came with like practice and kind of tearing myself apart and looking at different stuff. But what I think what white women don't understand when they're teaching yoga is that you have to do that as a person of color, not just as a yoga teacher, which is so different, right? So, like, I have to hold space for all white people, even though I know that they may like be racist, right? And so that's a really crazy thing to have to internalize and understand and look at myself, right? So then if you go in the bathroom and then those white women are talking trash about you, and I'll, you know, and then come out and be like, your yoga class was wonderful, right? Isn't that like such a right? And then I have to figure out how to love them somehow still, because I have to hold space for them in yoga, right? Personally, I don't. I can do my own work around that, but that's wild. That's just, I just glad you said that, because that it's like that's such a good example of something that could potentially happen and does happen to you.
Right.
That, like, you know, I'm, and holding space is such an intimate thing, right? I'm holding space for you to then release your trauma and your emotions and your stuff inside, whether, you know, no matter what person you are, color, whatever.
Right.
But as a person of color, I then need to hold space for then your racism. Wow. It's
Yeah.
wild. I just don't think that other people that are people of color that teach yoga understand that piece. I just wanted to say it
Yeah.
out loud.
That's definitely, I don't know. Like, it depends on where you are. Like, I really think it depends on where you are, because
Personally, you mean like internally?
yeah,
Or like,
it
okay.
depends on like where you are on the journey of what all that means.
Sure.
You know, what your upbringing was, you
Right.
know, who your you know, so it depends on every person.
All of it.
And it depends on all of it. And so it's just, you know, you really have to be very strong, I think, to do that. And I'm strong, but you know, I'm as dark as I am light. And when I say that,
Right.
it's like you have to hold space for both of those things. It's like that's why when I moved to where I moved to in North Carolina, it's like love and light is not what it's about. It's like spirituality is so not about just love and light. It's so far from it. And whenever I run into people that are like, you know, that are that way, I'm like, you have no idea. You know, you can't have light without darkness.
Totally. I
You
agree.
they like the sun, you got the moon, like a light, you got dark, you got a red, you know, like.
Right.
And so to think that you could always be up and high and light, that's another
Not
thing.
true.
I think that's another characteristic that white supremacy carries,
Yes.
is
Great
that you
point.
can be perfect like all the time. It's like, no, you can't.
Oh my God,
No,
I
you
love that.
can't. I
And I
mean,
think that's what,
and
yes, love that.
like, I've worked at jobs where people will lie about the smallest inconsequential. I'm like, why are you lying? Like, no one's gonna spank you. No one's gonna send you to your room. You know, we just want, and we'll just lie. And
Right.
you know, it's awkward.
It's
It's
awkward.
really awkward. You know, because it's so entrenched in a lot of white people to be perfect and to be good and to be perceived as number one. That gets in the way of performing in a collective manner. And that comes into play at a job, that comes into play, I think, even in equity spaces.
In equity spaces and authentic. Like it somehow doesn't allow the authenticity
Right.
somewhere.
And Resma, so great. They did a webinar, they did 2 webinars in the last week, and I attended both of them.
I know. I missed it.
It was so good. It was like, I just so good. And one of the things I talk about is like asset-based language is, you know, like you support, you don't help, right?
Yeah.
And so I have that same thing about nice. I'm like, I'm gonna punch somebody if they, like, you know, talk to me about being nice, or that was nice, or like nice. Nice is a performance.
Mm,
You know, like, I don't really describe things as nice. You know what I
right.
mean? That's beautiful. I love that. That brings so much, you know, like, not nice, because nice is a performance to make you think that you're
Mm,
safe. You know, people can be nice to you and they're dying to kill you at the same time. So we shouldn't be bamboozled by people that are nice to us.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, we have to wrap up, but this has been
Okay.
amazing.
Talking
So
to
I want
you.
to thank you for sharing your thoughts, and I just love the conversation, and I think you and I should do more. I think there's a lot to be learned here.
I
Is
can't
there
believe
anything?
your daughter is as beautiful as she is, and she literally reminds me of me when I was younger.
Well, I see the pictures of you and your hair, and I'm like, every time I'm like, what? It's like the adult. It's like the adult of blessing. It's
She's
like
so
crazy.
cute. She is so adorable.
But she looks like you. Every time I see your picture, I'm like, what? That's so weird. But very cool at the same time.
Yeah. So yeah,
But
so
thank
thank
you
you for
so
having me
much.
on. I'm
And
really that was great.
it was so great. And I think it's just information that people needed to hear. And it was a hard conversation, but it was a beautiful conversation. It wasn't nice.
Wasn't
Right?
nice. It was meaningful. It was meaningful. It
It
was
was super
heartfelt.
meaningful.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So thank you for your words. Thank you for your kindness. Is there anything else you want to say? How do people find you?
How do people find me? I'm on Instagram as Liberation is Free 2020.
Oh, yeah. And that's your email. I just love that.
And let's
And what's the
see.
name of your TED Talk again?
What is it called? Reparations as Health and Wellness.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Which I love.
And
Yeah.
or Health and Wellness as reparations, actually. So yeah, and I'm friends with you on Facebook. So if any of
Yeah.
your, anybody wants to get in touch with me through you, or
Yeah.
you know where to
Yeah.
find me.
Cool. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Have a
And
beautiful
I'll talk
day.
to you soon. Yeah, you
Yeah.
too.
Thank you.
Take
Thank you for
care.
tuning in. Whoever showed up,
Yeah,
it was awesome
whoever's
talking
here.
to you.
Yes, and so this is also going to be saved on YouTube, so I'll share the link to you, and then you can reshare it.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Have a good day.